In 1991 she had quintuplets. The world called them a miracle, the hospital put up a small plaque, and the little house on Maple Street became famous in a way their mother never wanted. She was a young woman then, 22, stubborn, with a laugh that rolled like thunder across the backyard. The babies arrived in the dim electric light of a winter morning, 5 tiny screams threading together into a single impossible chorus. Neighbors brought casseroles. A local TV station parked a van by the curb. The town took turns holding one of the small bodies so she could eat without dropping the fork. She named them in a hurry: Ava, Marcus, Lily, Jay, and Naomi, names that fit different parts of her heart. She learned how to measure formula by teaspoons and time by the rhythm of 5 breathing chests. At night she would lie awake, counting small victories. A nap that lasted an hour, all 5 diapers changed, a single day when no one cried for more than 10 minutes. Love, she discovered, multiplies in a house with 5 cribs. There was never a shortage of it, but there was also never a shortage of exhaustion, of the kind of calculations that live in a parent's brow. Money, sleep, and the way a single sick child could make every plan shrink. Some days she felt like a mountain climber without a rope. Some days the summit tasted like cinnamon and clean sheets. The kids learned to share toys and scoldings. They learned the hard rules. No one leaves a sibling behind, and arguments are forgiven on top of the washing machine. They learned song and silence in the same breath. Marcus could make any clock keep time better than it had before. Ava learned to sing like someone who had caught light in her throat. Lily read everything she could touch. Jay could make anything out of wood, and Naomi, the fiercest, could make a grown man apologize without meaning to. The town watched them grow like a slow-motion film. The news vans made them local celebrities for a week. Then life folded back into routine. School pickups, science fairs, scraped knees. Husbands and lovers drifted in and out of the mother's life. There were men who vowed to stay and didn't, and then men who loved her with a quiet endurance. She taught the children to load a dishwasher at 7 and to fold a shirt like it belonged in a store by 10. She taught them to measure grief in teaspoons and joy in full cups. Her faith was practical: feed the house, fix the leak, answer the unanswered. Years are a clever kind of thief. They steal the edges of bitter things and soften the bright colors until everything has a comfortable shade. The quintuplets, in their 20s and 30s, spread out like seeds. They kept the backbone of one another but found different lives. Ava lived in a city with a rooftop garden and a cat that thought it owned everyone. Marcus worked in a clock shop and repaired old timepieces like he was stitching the world back together. Lily moved to a coastal town and taught middle school literature. Jay built furniture for people who wanted something with a story. Naomi became a paramedic, the sort of person who could stand in chaos and make a way through. On the morning of their 31st birthday, the town gathered. You didn't get to be the quintuplets from Maple Street without people wanting to celebrate. Cameras, friends, old neighbors who remembered the casseroles. The mother stood in the center of it all, age on her face like well-earned lines, her hair threaded through silver. Laughter folded over their shoulders like a familiar shawl. Between the smiles, however, a small, private seam of the past stirred. There had always been one photograph she kept folded in a drawer beside her Bible. A picture of a nursery with 6 cribs, though the world only ever spoke of 5. It had started as a whisper in her mind, the memory of a 6th small body, peaceful, breathing differently in the wrong bassinet. In the fog of labor and exhaustion and a hospital full of blinking machines, a child had been moved or mislabeled or both. The hospital had letters that meant little when you were tired, explanations that smelled of stale ink and administrative kindness. Days later, paperwork had been filed, apologies given, smiles made for visiting reporters. Somewhere in those stacks someone misplaced a life. The mother did not tell the children. She folded the photograph and put it in the drawer and inhabited the ache like a quiet tenant. Time does what time does best. It made other matters urgent, and the long-ago smallness became a memory footnote. Yet memory has a way of elbowing at the ribs until it is noticed. In their 30s the siblings began to ask, partly because their mother asked herself aloud in ways that were noticeable, and partly because questions, once born, breed. Marcus, who liked the slow, methodical work of fixing, started calling old numbers and filing requests. Lily spent nights combing through public records like someone searching for fossils. Naomi, practical to the bone, made lists and scheduled phone calls. They did it like a family does anything important. In fits and starts, with humor, frustration, and a stubborn hope. Their search bounced off walls at first. Doors that had closed, files that had been shredded or lost, archivists who retired and took their secrets. Sometimes the trail grew cold for months and some nights they forgot the ache altogether. Then, one rain-thin afternoon, Lily found a stray notation in a county registry. a case number that echoed the dates she already knew. It was a soft little thing. A city name, a hospital initial, and a line that suggested, in bureaucratic English, that an infant had left one set of hands and entered another. She called her siblings with the sort of breathless, ridiculous urgency that makes people in other rooms turn their heads. They traced the line like cartographers. Records led to people, people to neighborhoods, neighborhoods to a small house near a river where a woman named Elise lived with a husband who built boats and a daughter who repaired engines for fun. The daughter, Mara, was 31, born the same winter as the quintuplets, raised with kindness, loved and taught and held. When Lily's message reached her, it landed like a stone dropped into a quiet pond. The ripples moved outward and then came back with an answer that tasted like possibility. Mara agreed to meet. She had always carried a peculiar sense of not quite fitting that made old photographs feel like maps to another life. She kept an old habit of collecting ticket stubs and small receipts, as if each scrap could be a clue. The reunion was arranged in a cafe by the river. Sunlight made the water look like scattered coins. The mother rehearsed sentences and then let them go. When she arrived, her heart hammered in her throat in a way she remembered from the hospital. The same primal, protective rhythm. Mara was waiting with a friend, her hands larger than the mother expected, her smile cautious and hopeful. They talked about small things first, the coffee, the weather, the way the town had changed, until the ordinary loosened the muscles enough to let truth step in. It was not a cinematic explosion. It was quieter, the way something real usually is. Words folded in, then apologies, then the explanation of a hospital error that had become a family secret in a different house. The adoptive parents spoke with a kind of gentle steadiness. They had loved Mara fiercely and had never hidden the truth of her adoption. It was only the specifics that had been missing. There were tears and laughter and moments of awkward humor as the two families learned the outlines of one another. Favorite foods, childhood pranks, the names of pets long gone. It was both ordinary and extraordinary to discover that the small cadence of speech was the same, that Mara tilted her head at the same jokes and scolded a cousin the same way their mother used to. Surprise, in the end, came in a different shape than anyone expected. It wasn't only that a lost child had been found. The surprise was the way belonging shifted. Mara fit and didn't fit, like a page inserted into a book that had been written without her. She had a different childhood, birthdays with different candles, parents with different recipes on the table, and she also had a set of instincts and gestures that matched the quintuplets in a way that felt almost genetic. She could tighten a screw and croon a lullaby. She argued with her brother over the right way to pronounce a pie crust, and she cried at the same parts of old films for reasons none of them could explain. The hard work began then, the kind of work all families do but fewer people get to watch unfold publicly. Piecing together a network of relationships, learning new birthdays, making room for apologies and gratitude side by side. They wrote letters to formalize what needed to be formalized and left other matters uninked because some things heal with time, not paperwork. The adoptive parents deserved the right to grieve and to celebrate both. The quintuplets deserved to know the whole of their origin story. Mara deserved the space to discover and choose what she wanted that origin to mean. They coaxed traditions into being. There were extra chairs at Thanksgiving, an annual pie contest that somehow lasted 3 days, and a nightly call where someone would read a paragraph from a book aloud because Lily insisted literature makes breathing feel organized. Mara's son learned old lullabies once sung in the house on Maple Street. Marcus taught someone how to fix a clock. Jay built an extra shelf in Mara's kitchen for board games and tin robots. Naomi argued that practical jokes are a sign of love and then demonstrated this belief by hiding everyone's keys for an afternoon. The mother watched all of it with a fierce, astonished smallness inside her chest. She felt relief like a tide washing an old wound. It eased the tightness but left a shape behind. She had carried the folded photograph for 31 years like a stone in her pocket, and now she held a new photograph, 6 children laughing on a porch until their heads tipped back. She did not pretend the past had not happened. She did not erase the years she had missed with Mara. But she learned the strange, generous arithmetic of families. You do not subtract what was lost, you add what is found. Reporters came for a story and found something more complicated than a headline. People like to hear a neat ending. Life rarely obliges. The truth that surprised everyone was simple and stubborn. Families are made in many ways. Sometimes a life slips to one side and grows, whole and beautiful, and sometimes paths cross decades later and make room for new stories. The quintuplets learned to listen to the other family's griefs and to celebrate without erasing the people who raised Mara. On the 31st anniversary of that winter morning, they gathered on Maple Street again. There were 6 candles on the cake this time and an extra place at the table. The mother stood and watched them, 5 cradling the 6th in ways both literal and metaphorical, and she let herself feel how small the ache had been and how large the life had become. They sat on the porch as dusk stitched itself across the sky, trading jokes and small remembrances the way people pass coins in a jar. The mother closed her eyes against the blur of streetlights and laughter and felt something steady settle into her. There were harder nights, of course. Questions about what might have been, conversations that hummed with the complicated music of grief and gratitude. Legal papers were signed where necessary. Boundaries were learned. But there was also 1,000 tiny mercies. A phone call to check in, a dish left on the stoop, a repaired toy handed over like an offering. Over time the two families braided something that felt new and old at the same moment. When the neighborhood settled into night, the quintuplets, now 6, sat on the step and told a story that had acquired a moral. Not that life is fair, but that life has a way of surprising you into tenderness. They laughed at an inside joke that had once been only 5 voices and now had a 6th joining in like a missing chord returned. The mother listened, feeling the world loosen its grip on the old secret. She had been carrying a stone for 31 years and had never stopped hoping for an answer. Now she set it down. Later, after the candles were blown and the dishes stacked, the mother stood in the doorway while the family lingered inside, and she breathed the humid, ordinary air of her house. She thought about the photographs she had kept folded all those years and about the new photographs they would take. Messy, unposed images that showed hands and smiles and the dark circles of sleep where parenting leaves a trace. She felt a peace that had the weight of years behind it, a small, steady warmth that would not be hurried. Outside, the streetlights blinked on. The quintuplets and the one who had been missing sat together, their shoulders touching, a cluster of ordinary humans who had survived neglect, error, and the vast unpredictable mercy of loving. The mother turned the light off and stepped back inside. She would sleep with the memory of the river light and the sound of 6 voices. She had once thought that a secret could be carried forever and that some absences would remain. The truth that surprised everyone was kinder than sorrow. Sometimes the family you know is only the beginning, and the missing pieces, when found, can fit in ways you had not dared imagine. She exhaled.